Welcome to Momma-Sota, the podcast where we dive headfirst into the beautiful mess of motherhood. I'm your host, Monica Eickman, and I'm here to keep it real. In a world that changes by the minute, parenting can often feel like an uphill battle. We all want what's best for our children, but what that best looks like varies for every one of us. Momma-Sota is your passport to the unfiltered, unapologetic world of mommy. No perfectly edited snapshots or unattainable ideals here. We're here to share the ups and downs, the triumphs and tantrums, the mess and the beauty of being a mom. Join me as we explore the raw and authentic side of parenting. This is your safe space to vent, laugh, and learn as we navigate the unpredictable journey of raising strong, capable, and independent children for the future. Hey mamas, welcome to today's episode of Momma-Sota. It's me, your host, Monica Eickman. I'm a stay-at-home mom to 3 active children with a 4th on the way, or maybe even here from the time of recording to release. Growing up, even with 4 girls, all in multiple sports and activities, family dinners were a staple in my household. As a stay-at-home mom myself, the children and I are blessed to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner together every day. Joining us today is special guest Jenna Gorman. She is a mom to 2 energetic boys who believes some of the best parenting moments happen in the kitchen. Jenna is raising her boys to appreciate food not just as nourishment, but as a way to bring people closer. Through her blog and social media presence, Jenna encourages parents to get their kids involved in the kitchen, embrace family mealtime, and find joy in the simple, everyday moments of motherhood. Welcome, Jenna, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, and thank you for that wonderful intro.
Absolutely. So before we get more into, what you're doing, which is just a small piece of you, tell us more just about yourself and your family as it stands.
Sure. I grew up in St. Cloud. I went to University of St. Thomas and got my degree in chemistry. I worked as a food chemist at General Mills for a couple years, but didn't really find fulfillment in that. I definitely wanted to interact more with people, so I went back to school and got my master's in education and my teaching license, and then I taught high school chemistry for a couple of years, which I loved. Really had to convince those kids at 7 in the morning that chemistry was worth learning. And then once my husband and I had our oldest son, Jack, he's 11 now, I decided that I wanted to stay home. So I have been home with them. So we've got Jack now who's 11 and Will who's 8. So I've been home with them ever since. And, it was such a blessing to be able to spend those younger years with them. And while it can be very draining and isolating, I just really look back on it so fondly. And then as they got older and were both in school, I had this newfound freedom that I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with it. And I had also felt that my kind of identity wrapped around my kids, and I really wanted something that I enjoyed, that was mine, that I could really pour into and find some fulfillment there. And so my husband was actually the one who suggested I start a food blog. We were on a pontoon in the middle of a lake, and he's like, you should start a food blog. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to, and I think I'm going to name it Land of 10,000 Recipes. And I was shocked no one had taken that already. And so that's where it started 5 years ago. So
that's wild. I think so many moms who had a career left their career when they had children right around the age of they've had their last kid, but that kid is, like you said, 3 to 4 years old, going to be maybe starting kindergarten soon. I see the question all the time is what do you do once your kids go back to school? And it's that big question of do I go back into the workforce? Depending, like you said,
yes.
you've been out of work for 8 years from the time of the oldest, or, and it's I wouldn't even know where to begin, or people do I
Right.
volunteer? Then people are well, I still love the freedom of being home as soon as my kids are out of school and all summer long.
Yes. I think it almost leads to a bit of an identity crisis where everything you did leading up to that was centered around your kids and what you were doing that day. And did they eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Did they take a nap? All of that. So I think it feels very odd to go from that to, well, what do I want now? And I think as mom, society is always like, your kids, your kids, your kids. So it was very weird for me to like think about what I wanted instead of what my kids needed.
I think identity crisis is the perfect term, the
Yeah.
perfect term for it. Because, like I said, my oldest is in second grade, 7.5. I've got one on the way still. So, we're not done yet. So, it's still at least 5 years out from when that truly, comes to a front. But my husband's asked me even several times, like, what are you going to do? And I think, like you said, because everything's wrapped around the kids and what I do all day long with them and activities for them, is that's still where
Mm-hmm.
my mind is stuck. Because I'm like, well, I'd like to volunteer in their classroom more, and I'd like to go on their field trips, and I'd like to volunteer at the school. I'm like, okay, that's still like all the same thing.
Right. It's still all about them.
Yeah.
Which is great. And it's like, as like, that's what I always wanted to do. I always wanted to be a mom and be able to do those things and have the flexibility in my schedule, like you said, to be the first person to greet them when they come home and handle all those big emotions that come through the door. But then it is just one of those things where you're like, well, I need something too.
So with that, I mean, that's awesome that your husband was like, "Hey, do this," and you're like, "Yes, yes, that's what
I
I'm
know.
gonna
I was like,
do."
you're a genius. No.
I mean, my husband pushed me to this podcast too, and I was like, it's a little outside my comfort zone.
Well, yay for supportive husbands, right?
Right. So, with what you're doing with your food blog, I mean, you've combined so many elements of yourself, which is amazing too, because like you said, I think we just sometimes get lost or stuck in certain things. So you've taken your love for food and cooking, combined that with your love of science, built that around your family and your kids to create this platform to inspire other moms. What was, I guess, kind of the turning point within like starting the blog, like your husband had suggested to you, and finding like how you could make a real impact in other families' lives?
Yeah. I think, first of all, that is totally true. I tell my husband Matt that all the time. And like, I love what I do now because it is everything I love combined into one, which if you would have asked me 5 years ago if I would say that, I would say absolutely not. But I think, as I started my blog, initially it was just an outlet. And every blog post I write, and I still do to this day, I write some story about our family, whether it's one of my kids' sports or a trip we went on or just something we're dealing with as a family, positive or negative. Because I really wanted my blog, selfishly, to be something fun that we all could look back on with pictures, time stamped. And while that doesn't help my search engine optimization and ranking on Google, I don't care because that's how I started this blog. It was for me. And I think that is what has allowed me to continue it to this day, is because I just truly enjoyed it. And when I was reading about starting a blog, it said that was, interestingly enough, that was the number one thing. Like, if you want to maintain your blog, you have to actually like it.
Sure.
And now I get that because it's a lot of work. And with that, I think when I like really realized it went beyond just kind of my internal sphere, I think I really started noticing an impact when I started doing virtual cooking classes, which unfortunately I don't do a ton of anymore because I'm too busy with all the other things. But I was noticing that the vast majority of people who signed up for these classes were moms and their sons. And it was funny because actually my husband Matt pointed that out to me. And it really struck me because I think for me with my own two boys, they're very, very into sports, and I played a bunch of sports growing up, and I love connecting with them in that way. But I also wanted another way to connect with them that didn't involve me getting sweaty. and and I found cooking to be that. And I I love it so much and I wanted to share that love with them, even if they didn't reciprocate it. I just wanted them to kind of see mom doing something she loves. And as I started it with them very young, and as it grew, I noticed both of them maybe not grow a love, but a definite appreciation for it. And then when Matt made the observation that it was moms and their sons, I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." Like I think other moms are looking for those ways to connect. And I think cooking, like not only is it a lifelong skill, it is just a really neat way to connect with your kids, boys or girls, but obviously for my two boys, but
I love that you, even with the realization and recognition that you're like, well, it doesn't necessarily help with my SEO, my search engine optimization, but you're like, it doesn't, that's not why you're doing it. That's not solely why you're doing it. It's not just a business. It is a
right.
passion and something you love. And when you were saying it, I was like, oh, it's kind of like a diary and a baby book and a photo album, which is like all things
Yes.
that are lost in today, but I'm like just
It
all
is.
wrapped into one to just kind of keep that going. It's super
Mm-hmm.
fun.
And
And I
it
think,
is, I even with that, it's pretty fun because I have several recipes that are ranked number one on Google, which I am quite proud of because the other half of my blog post does focus on search engine optimization. But that to me is just like, okay, I'm doing it right because it's like making me happy and it's accomplishing what I wanted to.
and I think the other piece too that was neat with that is, like you said, it's important for our kids to see us, especially like I said, it comes back to sometimes moms and again, stay-at-home moms being passionate about doing something and doing what we love. Because there's always like the Mother's Day and Father's Day activities at school where it's like my mom's name is, and it's all the fill in the blanks, and it's her favorite
Right.
color is, and so many times you see like my mom's job is, or my mom's favorite thing to do is, and it's just like be a mom or like something
Yeah,
that's like a
taking
household
care of
task,
me.
do the laundry, yes. And you're like, oh man.
Yeah, you're like, that's true. I love you dearly, but
But it's like you don't necessarily see the same thing on the dad's page.
right. Yeah. No, I think that's totally true.
So I think another piece, cooking with our kids and involving them in the kitchen, and like you had said too, with your classes, noticing that it was moms with boys is super cool because, like you said, it is a lifelong skill. And we are moving away from some of the stereotypes, but at the same time, you still think of like, oh, who baked the cookies and made the birthday cake? And it's like, oh, mom. Who grilled dad? And then it's like, who made dinner? And it's like, kind of that in
Right.
between.
Right.
But it's
Right.
like when your boys go off to college, like they need to be able to cook for themselves.
Yep. And I think so many, like my husband, I mean, he didn't really know. He did, bless his heart, when he was trying to impress me when we were dating. He invited me and all my friends over and cooked us dinner and I was like sold. But, like that was like a reach for him because he didn't grow up cooking. Whereas now, like Jack and Will, 11 and 8, could probably outcook their dad.
And I think some of that, like you said, just starts so young. Even like the 3-ish-year-old big girl birthday present is like the toy kitchen and the food, and then the boys is like the workbench, the tool bench.
Right, right. We are here to
Yeah,
smash gender stereotypes.
like those are both very valuable skills for both genders to be able to
Yes,
use a basic hammer and saw and to be able to cook in the kitchen.
right. Amen.
And so cooking with your kids has been a fun and educational way for you to connect. What would you say for moms who are just things like you said, life gets so busy. A lot of times we're trying to make things quick, but to still make mealtime special, some simple ways to get their kids involved.
Yeah. I mean, I think before, like, first of all, when you're going into it, I always say, like, have extremely low expectations. Every time I've cooked with my kids, it has not been this like amazing, joyful experience. Like that's life. And I think people see pictures or things like that. And they're like, well, this should be fun. And, you know, sometimes kids spill a ton of stuff and that happens. So I have taught my kids from very young, chefs make messes and then they clean it up. And like my 11-year-old still today, he like dumped a cup of flour and he said that. And so I think going into it, having low expectations and like really setting the table for like, I'm not my kids are going to make this huge mess and then I have to clean it all up. I think that can be a big burden to entry. So I make it very well known at the beginning. I'm not going to be cleaning all this up. I'll help you. But if we're cooking together, that's part of what cooking and preparing a meal is cleaning it up. I think in terms of actually getting your kids involved, I think at the end of the day, I always say like we all have to eat. So whether that's just making something super simple or throwing in like freezer meal into the oven or something like that, just simple things as like, okay, what dish do you think we should use? And having your kid like talk through that and like that without you even realizing it, you're like teaching them spatial reasoning. If you are going to put a little salt on at the end, have your kid do that. So even if you literally are so short on time that you are trying to find as many shortcuts as possible, which is fine because at the end of the day, you have to feed your family, just finding those tiny little things to make your kid feel like they have some skin in the game when it comes to dinner, and for you just to have that intentional time with them while you're preparing dinner for your family.
I like the line. I'm going to start using it that chefs make messes, but they also clean them up.
Yeah.
Because I think,
Yeah.
and I get my, I have my kids help in the kitchen with different things, but that is sometimes one of the biggest things. I'm like, ay caramba, this is so much, it seems like so much extra work, but I'm like, well, just have them take care of it.
Right. And it took me a while to retrain my brain for that because I'm
Mhm.
extremely type A. I
Yep.
like things a certain way. And when your 3-year-old's helping you bake, that can be so stressful for fellow type A people. And so I think doing that, and then also I think, my kids, when they would crack an egg and get shell in there, they'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And, because you're like, oh, I messed it up. But I think just there are times where, like one time I was bringing 5 eggs over from the fridge and I very stupidly decided to just hold them in my hands and I dropped 2 of them. So they splattered on the floor and my kids were at school, but I stopped and took a picture and I showed them later because I think it's important to show kids too, like grown-ups make mistakes and actually show them a mistake you made. And then my youngest was like, well, did you clean it up? I'm like, yes, well, I cleaned it up. It
No,
just kind of removes that, like, you can't make a mistake.
no, I'm right there with you with the type A, and I was thinking the whole time you said it, the eggs, because my daughter always asks me to crack the eggs, and then you said it, and I
Yeah.
was like, and I'm like every time. So I've already like I've retrained myself on that one where I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna start cracking the eggs when I'm like ready to put them into the pan already, like the bacon's done. I'm like, well, if I
Right.
start this early and she wanders over and asks me to crack them, then her taking like 15 minutes is okay.
Right. Well, and another little side tip, I always have them crack them into a separate bowl because then if they do get a bunch of shells in there, it's way easier to pick them out of just eggs than eggs with baking soda and flour and if you're like baking or something.
Right, you're like now the whole recipe.
Right, right.
So you also started to point out when you were talking about like which pan should they use and things like that. So you've emphasized this cooking and as an opportunity to teach life skills. Parents make mistakes too,
Mm-hmm.
but also math and reading. What are
Yeah.
some of the most like valuable lessons you've taught your boys through cooking along those lines?
I think, with say if you're doubling a recipe, then you're working on fractions and just I think so many kids as from when I was teaching, you really learn and realize how kids vary greatly in how they learn best. So I think with cooking, it's an opportunity for hands-on learning and visual learning. So when you say 1/2 plus 1/2, and kids are like, wait, what's the deal with this fraction? How does the what's this denominator, all that, but if you show them like, okay, here's 1 cup, here's a half cup, and we're going to do 2 half cups, and then you pour it both into the 1 cup, and then they're like, oh. So I think it just like very readily presents itself to all sorts of different skills, even if you don't necessarily intend to do that. I have also, when my kids have been younger, I'll have them read off the ingredients. And even if they can't necessarily read yet, they'll spell it to me and then I'll get the stuff. Or I'll flip it and I'll read it to them and they'll have to find the stuff. And then that's kind of a good way for them to understand, butter's kept in the fridge and flour and sugar are in the cupboard, and just kind of get that awareness of a kitchen in general. But I think basically everything that you're doing with cooking, they're learning something. Like even patience, like, oh my gosh, I want one of those cookies so bad. Well, they're not done baking yet. So I think it's this wonderful like time to connect, but there really are so many teachable moments within it.
I think too, when you were referencing just like the reading, my son, I remember it was probably kindergarten. So he's in Chinese immersion. And so
Oh,
one of the
neat.
biggest things we were told as parents going into the program is we will not be teaching your child how to read, like English read, and that will be your responsibility. And so kindergarten, I mean, obviously we would work on letter sounds and things up leading up to that, but kindergarten, I'm like, okay, now I really have to teach you to read. And
Right.
I don't have this life skill either as far as being a teacher.
Yeah.
And one of his biggest questions, because, he goes to school and of course with the iPads, everything has like a click play, to like hear the instructions and things like that. And it was like, why do I need to be able to read? And it's like his dad listens to audiobooks. We get
Yeah.
directions on our phone and it tells us, in 100 feet turn, and then at the turn, it's like turn, it's like everything
Right.
reads to us or tells us. And the only thing I could like think of off the top of my head was like a recipe. I was like reading a recipe. I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I was like, that's where I went to. I was like, food. I was like, you can't read the product label when you're in the store. There's nothing there to tell you what it is. And I was like, when you're reading a recipe, I'm like, there's not usually a click button that's like gonna read all the instructions to you. And that's exactly where I went, was like, if nothing else in the world, you need to be able to read to cook
Read a
and make a
recipe.
recipe.
That's crazy. I guess I've never had that thought because, in public elementary schools they just get taught to read. But that is so true how so much of it is digitized now.
Yeah. I'm like, truly, yes. Sometimes you don't have to be able to read. Like you can just hit play on something.
Right.
And so would you say your recipes and the food choices, I guess, in general, have those kind of evolved from when you started to like where you are now, based on
Yeah.
having like the kids and them growing older, or how has that progressed?
I don't think as much based on, well, maybe a little bit. I guess one of my very first recipes that I made they're called, and my kids named them, green machine spinach pancakes. And that was something that when they were younger, I was like, okay, they're supposed to be eating leafy greens. They're not going to be eating a salad. How can I incorporate this into their diet? And I was like, oh, pancakes seem like a pretty good way to do that. So when they were younger, I made them with like baby cereal. And so then that recipe evolved into oatmeal, and then it's sweetened with orange juice and has applesauce in it, and like 2 whole bags of spinach. And they love them. My oldest is a very particular eater, and he will eat like 20 of these pancakes. They're like little, I make them little, in one sitting. So I think that definitely evolved. But I would say, in terms of the bulk of my recipes, initially, just because everything was so new and I'm creating this website and all that, I kind of went to known commodities. So I took a lot of recipes that my mom made growing up. And then when I really looked at them and analyzed them, I was like, wow, there's a lot of butter in these. So but I loved them. So I took those and just did a little bit more of a healthy spin on it. Because I'd say in general, like I just eat pretty healthy, whatever that means to different people, but less butter for the purposes of this conversation. And so initially I was just kind of taking those and like reworking them. And then it morphed into my youngest, Will. He is a big foodie and loves trying new things. And he refuses and has for the last like 4 years. So once he turned 4, refuses to order off the kids menu because it's all cheeseburger, hot dog, chicken strips, and
Yep.
mac and cheese, which
Yep.
he's
I
not
feel that
wrong.
one.
And so he's like, you guys get all these like, and it's funny because he's heard me talk these beautiful plated meals with herbs on top. He's like, why don't I get that? I'm like, okay, fine. Well, let's share. But he'll try something at a restaurant. He'll say, oh, mom, you have to recreate this. So it's fun now because I'll take a picture of something we ate and then I'll like go into the edit for photos and I'll type on there like what the flavor profile that I remember tasting. And then when I go to create a recipe, the actual recipe, I'll kind of work backwards. And then, man, that kid, he is brutally honest and he has a very good palate. And he'll be like, nope, nope, this does not have enough acid. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have created a monster. But that honestly is like a really fun bonding thing for us to do because he like loves being my taste tester. And he won't just say, I don't like this. He'll give me like very specific feedback. So it's been a fun evolution, I would say.
That's awesome. I would say my oldest is, without having the food knowledge, because I don't have the food knowledge of some of that, but he's definitely my one too that he was off that kids menu a long time ago.
Oh yeah. And my
Like
11-year-old is still really riding it and he gets nervous when they're like kids 12 and under. I'm like, it's fine, Jack.
it's
Just don't worry about it.
that's so funny. I know I always tell my kids looking at the kids menu too. I'm like, they're like, what's on the kids menu? And of course, my oldest, can read and he will rattle things off. I'm like, yep, except that's not really what your options are. You can pick the,
Yeah, right.
like, we're not having chicken strips for the 10th time.
Yeah, I know.
And we went to, what was it? Oh, I asked them when we went to Florida last to visit my mom if they could each pick one thing that they wanted to do. And they both came up with food ideas.
Oh,
So
that's
yeah,
fun.
my son was like, I think my daughter just kind of like followed suit on that. But he's like, I want to go eat seaweed. And like we eat like seaweed chips and stuff here. But he's like, something
Sure.
else with like seaweed. I was like, okay, I'll figure this one out. And
Oh,
then the younger one, bubblegum ice cream.
oh, that's awesome. I love that.
And the bubblegum ice cream was harder to find than the seaweed, believe it or not.
Was it? Oh, that's hilarious. I guess.
All right. So beyond the cooking and stories within your platform, you've also dedicated time each year to St. Jude Children's Research and Hospital. Can you tell us more kind of how that all came about?
Yeah. As my blog started taking off and, I realized I had a bigger platform, I wanted to make sure that part what I was doing was funneled towards bettering some part of our community. And I decided to partner with St. Jude. And I chose them because when I was 8, my little brother Mikey died from leukemia when he was 4. And he wasn't treated at St. Jude, but he was actually treated at Children's Hospital here in the Twin Cities. But St. Jude has been instrumental in raising the overall childhood cancer survival rate,
Mhm.
specifically in leukemia, from like 50% when he died to now it's like 97, which is
Wow.
wild.
I didn't know those statistics. That is wild.
Yeah. And that piece amongst so many other things. But I just thought, St. Jude has this kind of nationwide name recognition, and it's something that benefits more than just the Twin Cities. So I I started getting involved with them. I've done a fundraiser for them for 4 years now. And it initially just started out as doing one of my virtual cooking classes, whatever proceeds I raised, I donated them.
Sure.
And then the last 2 years, it morphed into something much more. And I had my first ever in-person event at Holman's Table in St. Paul. And I did a huge cooking class. We had two different classes. We had Holman's Table was amazing and they donated all the food. I had Urban Growler donated beer. I had Tattersall Distillery made like a craft cocktail just for my event and donated all of that. We had a bouncy house, a face painter. Holman's Table got a private jet and parked it. They're right on the St. Paul downtown airport.
Mm-hmm.
And they parked it out there so everybody could like go out and take pictures on a private jet and pretend like you were flying one, which almost the adults liked more than the kids. The kids
Right.
loved it, but the adults
Like,
really
look where
loved
I
it.
am.
Yeah. And then we had like a big cooking class and everybody cooked together. And yeah, so the past 2 years, I've raised almost $15,000 for St. Jude. So in honor of Mikey. So it's been something really special. And I just feel so proud to be a part of it.
That's super cool to see that. I mean, you're talking about this event and it sounds like something that's coming from like corporate or a business that's been around for 30, 50 or more years with tons of employees. And you're talking about like, nope, I'm a mom that does a blog that's 5 years in and this,
Yeah, I
this is what I'm
appreciate
doing.
you saying that. That I will say it is so much work. And I every year I'm like, oh my gosh, should I do this again? Because it's very stressful planning it all. And honestly, it's very emotionally draining for me
Sure.
because, I just keep thinking about Mikey and all those memories get brought back. But then I just think like to be able to fuel that or funnel that sorrow and sadness into doing something good. It's like every time it heals a little piece of me. And I really involve my boys too. And so it's kind of special because now whenever we're out and if they see St. Jude something, they're like, Mom, St. Jude. So I've really gotten them to buy in and like every year they like go up to their piggy banks and find whatever money they have and they donate their money. And it's like a really beautiful thing, I think, to like teach your kids to care about something more than just their egocentric world and just involve them in something like that.
I think it's really empowering too. And even like your blog and your business there is surrounded around food, but you found something again that you had a passion for and a love for and a care for and built that together. I think sometimes we get stuck on like trying to figure out where we want to give back because again, you want it to have meaning.
Right.
And so how would you tell, or what would be your advice to other moms too, just to like encourage their children to get involved in giving back and embrace that?
I think you have to pick something that matters to you personally, whether if your child has some sort of disability or illness and there has been an organization or a hospital or something that has helped, or if you are very passionate about food shelves and giving back to the community. I think if you, especially for kids, if you can kind of narrow that scope and choose one thing and then turn it into not a we have to do this, but we get to do this. Because I think sometimes for kids, it's like, oh, we have to do that again. But I think we talk a lot about our privilege and how we don't have to worry about the food that's on our table and we get to be home for Christmas and not in the hospital. And I think just having those conversations regularly, it really, I think, from what I've seen with our kids, has helped them to gain a different perspective of just it's all about them, which kids, I think every kid thinks that way because it is, frankly. But I think it really helps them to just kind of see something greater than them and how I think with my particular thing, it's cool for the boys to see me in charge of it all and then see the feedback that I get from other people. I think they're like, wow, Mom, like we're making a difference. I think that's been really special.
And I think, like you said, a lot of it comes down to when you're not in the moment of like, oh, it's Christmas time and we need to figure out a reason to give back. But just those daily conversations of, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
your privilege, something we've been talking about a lot in our home. And I got the book recommendation from a couple podcast recordings back, and I actually just made a reel about it, but the book's called It Could Always Be Worse. And in just talking to our kids, like you said, on a daily, when they start to complain about something, that's, our new phrase around our house is it could always be worse. And we
Yeah.
were talking even the other night, and I don't remember why we got on the subject, but just like how our kids, like I said, we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner together as a family at the dinner
Mm-hmm.
table. We have snacks in between besides, and, all these extra things. And that's normal for you in your, living with me, but that's not normal for everyone.
Right.
And
Yeah.
just having those
I, I
conversations.
I think it's so important. I think, you kids have their sphere of influence and adults do too. And, I grew up in rural St. Cloud and predominantly affluent white community, went to private school, and that was just kind of, everyone was the same more or less. And so I think even if it like maybe makes kids a little uncomfortable, I think for them seeing adults, children in situations other than what they know and what they're comfortable with allows them to have more empathy. My oldest son is treated at Gillette Children's, and just every time we go there, seeing the wide range of disabilities and how some kids are based on whatever it is, how some kids are barely affected and some kids are severely affected. And just even for them seeing that, I think has allowed them to have so much more empathy for others and, what they're dealing with. But I think it's almost those like tough conversations when they're younger that leads to more empathy and understanding as they get older.
And I think that is a big piece of it. Like you said, is it's okay to be uncomfortable and to have
Mm-hmm.
those real life conversations, because it is real life. My husband sometimes, because I'm around the kids all the time, and I'm reading, parenting blogs and things like that all the time. And my kids will bring something up that I told them. We had been walking past a homeless, encampment when we were in San Diego, and they were asking all these questions. And rather, than just like hurrying them along or being embarrassed or like trying to get out of there, it's like, I talked to them about experiences and life choices and how some people have this and don't have that. My husband's like, why would you tell them those things? I'm like, because that's real life.
Yeah,
That's the truth. And there's no sense, like kids are curious when they ask about someone who is in a
100%.
wheelchair or using crutches or, wears a hijab. My daughter did that when we were checking out at Target once, and rather than just like trying to be like,
Shush them.
they
Yeah.
heard you. Yeah. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's not going anywhere. Talk
Right.
about those things.
Yes, because I think when you hush them, it gives them the impression it's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And not only is it not okay to ask, it's not okay to be quote unquote different from them. Gillette Children's published this book. I believe the title is It's Okay to Ask. And it basically gets at exactly what you're talking about, where, kids are going to physically look different. Everyone is going to, but it's okay to ask instead of ignoring them or pointing and quietly, just ask, oh, why are you in a wheelchair? Or, oh, why, or even going up to the parent, why does his face turn like that? Or, because like you said, kids are just naturally curious. And I have found that also, along with the type A with baking, that was a retraining for me because my natural inclination was to be like, shh, don't draw attention to it. But I have found that by just having conversations openly and letting them ask questions, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable, it just allows for so much more understanding and acceptance from your kids.
And I think that is the biggest piece, like you said, is it gives the impression, even if that's not what you were trying to do, and it's just like you were embarrassed your kid asked, but it does give the impression that like how that person is not okay. Well, that was definitely not the message I was trying to deliver, but that,
Right. That's
and I think,
exactly right.
yeah, and I love, I mean, here's another book I'm going to look into. It's okay to ask.
Yeah.
Because even with in saying that is, again, reminds me of the lady at the checkout. I don't know all the different terminology of, like the full head coverings versus the partial or the full body. And I did the same
Yeah.
thing. I turned to her and I asked, I was like, can you tell my daughter what exactly your covering is called? Because I didn't want to be offensive either by thinking I know it all and I'm
Right.
telling my daughter
Right.
something that's not true.
But then I think by you doing that, like what a beautiful experience for your daughter to see you in a point of, uncomfort, turn to someone and be like, hey, we just want to know more. Like we are just curious and would like to learn. Can you tell us? I think that's cool as a parent for your kid to like witness that.
Yeah, and I think it was, and even for like then the lady at the checkout counter was like, okay, this is a whole different like experience and way for us to all interact and all to learn together, and
Right.
just like now all
Right.
the uncomfort really got unpacked into everyone just like feeling more comfortable actually.
Yeah, it's so true. You like flipped it on its head. Good job.
So then I mean, and you even said like you're doing less of like the virtual cooking classes as your own schedule gets busier, and I'm assuming some of that comes with as our kids age and they are in 101 activities of their own.
Yes, that is
So
correct.
how do you ensure that you're still making time for family and slowing down in those special moments in the kitchen, even though you're, doing all these other things?
Yeah, I mean, now that I've cooked with my kids more, there will be times where my oldest, who I would say is probably a little more reluctant to cook with me now, he'll be like, Mom, can we make fill in the blank? And even if I have a million things to do or whatever, I'm always like, yes, we can do that. And he just did that the other day and it was with green machine pancakes. And I was like, we can't right this minute, but let's look at the calendar. How about we do it tomorrow at this time? He's like, okay. And so I think just making a plan, even if I can't do it right then, definitely lets me do that. My youngest, he will sometimes get mad at me if I start cooking without him. So it's like whether I want to or not, that kid is cooking with me. So, and he's gotten, with all his practice, he's gotten really good. So I'll give him something that I was planning on chopping, and now honestly, it like cuts down on the time needed to make dinner because he's my little sous chef. So I think as our schedules have morphed into being busier and busier, the kids have morphed into being better and better in the kitchen. So it just becomes easier.
I think with saying, like we can say yes, but yes doesn't mean drop everything
Now.
we're doing right this second. Right.
Yeah.
Like I've got dinner
Yes.
halfway done and we have to go to soccer practice and you're asking me to cook something else. Like it doesn't have,
Right.
it's not going to be yes right now, but it also doesn't have to be no. It's like, okay, yes, let's look at the calendar. When can that be on the menu?
Right. Yeah,
And
because
then,
I think I've been trying to find more ways to say yes, because you're always like, no, you can't have a sleepover on Tuesday night. No, you can't drink a liter of pop. No, And
yeah,
so when they do ask for those reasonable things, I'm trying to find more yeses that I can say. And that's a nice way to do it.
I think that's a big, I think that's a better way to put like the common phrase of like choose your battles. Because I don't really love
Yes.
that. I'm like, what does that mean? But I think, like you said, like find where you can say yes. Like, okay, my daughter, I took off her pajamas and I wanted to put on her new underwear, but I hadn't taken off her pajama top yet. And she was like
Hmm.
freaking out that she wanted her top off first. And I'm like, okay, like, why? This doesn't have to be
Right. This
an
makes no
issue.
sense, but sure, let's do
Exactly.
it.
Like, okay, you can be butt naked for a second. We'll take the shirt off first and then we'll put on the new underwear. Like you said, it's like those
Right.
simple moments where it's like, okay, I can fight you and show you that I'm the boss. But you're like, why? In that
Right.
moment, why?
Well, and ultimately that just leads to more discord in the family and less buy-in. Whereas if you are just like, you know what, you got it, kid, they're like, oh, great, awesome, I feel great.
One moment here. That's my baby.
Oh, sure.
Mommy.
Hi. Did you just wake up?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, you come join us. See, that's the real life podcast here.
I
Mom's first,
know.
right?
I love it. Such a sweet little voice.
I was taking a ring last time.
You were. So then the other piece of doing all of those things and having all of the busy schedule and, you've got the projects and the blog and more new coming up, that's like a cocktail mocktail side of things. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Land
Talk
of
a little bit about
10,000
that.
cocktails.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something I basically a year after I started my Land of 10,000 Recipes blog. I was like, ooh, I have an idea for another blog. And my husband's like, are you sure you want to do that right now? I'm like, no, I don't. But I feel like I finally was at a point where I really had a good grasp of my recipes blog and kind of knew what worked and what didn't. So I just started it. I put it out into the world in December. So it's a baby. It's like a month old.
You had your own baby.
Um, yeah, exactly. My virtual baby. And I've always, I think especially during COVID, but I've always just loved creating cocktails and mocktails. So I have this running list of different things that I created, and I feel like it kind of taps into my chemist side of mixing things.
Sure.
But yeah, it's fun. My son Will is pumped that I'm doing mocktails too because he gets to be the taste tester of those. And I've had lots of friends volunteer to be the taste tester for the cocktails.
So now you're just creating girls' nights besides.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So in wrapping everything up with that, you've got lots on your plate. What would be kind of one final piece of advice you would have for moms, whether it be in the kitchen with food, that side of things, or anything just being a mom in general?
I think just realizing you can't do everything all the time. I think that was a big thing for me just in my journey as a mom and then incorporating my blog and everything like that. I think there are times when you have to put things on the back burner, and that's okay. I think I've had to really teach myself that because I think in our society, it's always more, 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 and you can achieve more, you can do more. But in reality, that's for the birds. It just doesn't help anyone. And so I think just when you become a mom, I think really developing your priorities and sticking with them, and then being okay with saying no and asking for help. I think those have been my big takeaways from parenting and creating something new.
And then that fits right in line with our closing always of the podcast. And in fact, my husband, he texted me and then he goes, oh, I didn't mean to text you that I was creating a Facebook post, but he texted me this morning. Kobe Bryant once said, you won't feel motivated every day. And then it went on from there.
Yeah.
So I go, what are you trying to tell me here?
Yeah. Well, I remember the very first summer that my kids were home all summer that I had started my blog. I was or no, it was the second summer, but I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot do this blog and be home with them full time. They're with me all the time. They didn't go to any camps. I was getting so overwhelmed. And then I just thought, you know what? I don't have to do that. And so just knowing it's okay to step back and take a breather.
And that's exactly it. And so what we always say at the end is, until next time, mamas, keep doing your best.
I love that.
Thank you for joining me on this roller coaster of momming right here on Momma-Sota. I hope you enjoyed our candid conversation about all things parenting, where perfection is left at the door and real life takes center stage. Stay tuned for more heartfelt, unfiltered discussions in the next episode. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review Momma-Sota on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us. Until next time, this is Monica Eickman signing off. Keep rocking that mom life, and remember, you've got this.